Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 436 of the No Sugarcoating Podcast. How are all of you all over the world? I hope you're having the most amazing day. I've had a bit of an eventful week. And I know why this happened, and I will talk more about it, not now. Because as you know, everything I go through and experience, I like to share because there's always deeper meaning and connection. But I send me all the healing vibes. I'm fine. But I earlier this week went out to put seed in the feedy, we call it the bird feeder, and I like stepped on my foot really weird and I twisted it really bad. And luckily no break, no fracture. It's sprained, but it'll be okay. It's my right foot. I sprained my left ankle like when I was going through food addiction. And I remember it took so long to heal because I kept doing intense workouts and like didn't have the proper footwear and like was so resistant to slowing down. And see, this time I don't have to worry about any of that because I'm not in an intense workout routine. I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm just like, great, I get to rest and I get to sit at my desk and do my work, which I'm so grateful that I get to work in my office anyway and sit and elevate my foot and it will heal so much faster. So like this time is going to be so much easier. But there's a reason behind what happened and just a couple of things. The right side of the body represents the masculine, letting go. And sprains specifically are like anger and refusal to move forward in different ways. And there's a particular circumstance that I'm processing through right now that is pretty significant, if I do say so myself, but we came here for it. I know my soul signed up for the experience. And a key theme this year is like surrender and letting go of control. And I feel like that's why these circumstances are coming up. And sometimes when we get resistant and we don't allow, we end up with a ankle sprain or a tweaked foot or a hurt leg. And so it's just the body's way of going, hey, like, I know it's a lot to process. I know it's a lot emotionally, but like, come on, you got to let this go. Like, you totally can do this. And so I will elaborate and talk more about it in a future episode. Like I said, I'm fine. In fact, I'm very grateful that it wasn't worse. And I'm so grateful because I couldn't walk on it the night that it happened when we had gone in to just get it checked out and get an x-ray. And so the fact that I was able to wake up the next day today and walk on it, it'd be so much better. It was really helpful. I'm putting on my arnica cream, taking my arnica capsules, and envisioning a lot of healing light in my foot. And I think all of this energy connection and mindset and just being grateful is so powerful. And it's so nice when you do healing work and you work on your mind, because if something like this happens, like I could have been so pissed off and so upset and just worked up and drained so much of my energy. And I'm just like, how can I be grateful? There's a message and a lesson here. So it feels really good to get to this point. Anyways, I just wanted to share, send me lots of healing love. We're going to heal this super fast. And I'm super excited and grateful that the work that I do is sitting at my desk so that it's easy to sit and record my podcast. I'm not in pain at all. And I'm just here getting ready to record this epic episode for all of you, which I think you're going to really enjoy. And that's really going to resonate for you. So today's episode, we're diving into how lack of boundaries fuels emotional eating, because it does, and why we hold back setting boundaries and the benefits of setting healthy boundaries. Oh my gosh, this is something that so many people struggle with, including myself in the past. Now I'm like the boundary setter because it's so important and they're so healthy. I've had countless sessions with clients over the last week or two, though, where, we're just starting to work together. And a pattern, one thing I'm noticing that is fueling and amplifying emotional eating triggers and binge eating triggers and loss of control with food and sugar cravings, etc., is the lack of boundaries that are established in certain dynamics with other people. And so what happens is we go out of alignment and then we get upset and then we feel like we're out of control with these other external circumstances. And then you grasp for what you think you have control with, which is food, even though you're just out of control with food as well. So I thought, oh my gosh, what a better topic today to talk about than this. Little insight into the podcast. Sometimes I know very clearly, like a week or two before I'm going to record the episode, what I want to talk about. And sometimes it's like the day of, the morning of. I just trust like whatever is meant to land and what I'm meant to share with you will come through, because most of it is from heart. I don't pre-plan much of what I'm going to say. It really comes from heart and experience. And So this is a download, for this topic that came through this morning. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is such an important conversation. So if you're ever wondering how I come up with it, and I have a spreadsheet with like 150 topics I haven't even touched on yet, and so many other ideas. Like, I'm never going to get bored of recording this for you guys because I love you. So a couple quick announcements as we dive in today. The show notes for today's episode can be found at amberapproved.ca/podcast/436. Just a friendly reminder, if you are listening to this podcast and you can resonate with what I'm talking about, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're putting your hand up, you're like, I'm the one who sucks at setting boundaries and I let people overstep me all the time and I don't speak up and I'm so pissed off and angry or tired of it. And I can see now how it is fueling my self-sabotage with food. I want help with it. I want help to work on my ego mindset and to help me like live more in my power. And I want help. And I want someone to have my back to help me walk with me while I set healthy boundaries and deal with others. Like, I'm totally here. I talk to my clients about this stuff all the time. It's so important. And it is a part of your healing, because if we lack boundaries, we lack this safety, this regulated nervous system, and it just feels more self-sabotage with food. So if this is resonating for you and you want to connect and work together, this is where I'd highly suggest booking a 30-minute body freedom consultation for us to connect and talk more about this and all the other things going on for you that you want support with. And then we can talk about the journey and the programs, and I can answer your questions and we can see if it feels like a fit. And you can go to amberapproved.ca and click schedule consultation. And it's super easy, 3 steps to fill out the intake, pay the $50 USD, and book your time for us to connect. And I can't wait to connect with those of you that are booking sessions. A lot of you are coming forth to want to do this deeper work, and I'm so excited and honored always to support you. And secondly, of course, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this at the end today, but the Kick the Sugar 5-week course comes early October. So if you're interested in that and you want to learn how to reduce your sugar cravings, regulate your blood sugar, and feel more empowered with your relationship with food, all the details will be available for that. And like I said, I will touch on it a little bit more at the end of today's episode, but all those details are in the show notes at amberapproved.ca/podcast/436. I wanted to give a bit of insight about my foot, because if I've learned anything over the past 10 years, it is that when we either resist something or we're not fully allowing or surrendering to something, we can have different symptoms come up. And my body yells loudly if I am like tolerating my ego too much, or I'm resisting something, or I'm giving energy to something that honestly doesn't serve me. And so I don't see it anymore as like a punishment or bad. I just go, okay, you know what? Like, you've got my attention. I'm going to work on this. And thank you for communicating with me. And thank you for not making it worse. Right. So there's always these learnings. And it's funny because last year, this time is when I got the glass in my right pointer finger and the right side again. So there's more release, more letting go of control, more surrender occurring here. And I've come a long way since last year, and I'm really proud. So let's talk about how lack of boundaries fuels emotional eating. So when I was struggling with emotional eating, when I see my clients struggling with emotional eating, a common thread or a common pattern is that there is a struggle, a fear, a block, a resistance around setting a healthy boundary. And to me, a boundary it's really a loving action step, a loving verbal, physical, whether it's like you're blocking something in your schedule or you're having a, difficult conversation with someone, but it's something that indicates a border or a limit. It's like I will not tolerate something going past this point. I will not tolerate being treated a certain way. I'll not tolerate an unequal exchange of energy in this relationship anymore, right? So there's a limit indicated, right? So when something no longer serves us, we indicate the bounds and the limits that we're not willing to go beyond. And if something is, when we set boundaries, they really support our greatest good. So, I mean, to me, it's like a loving action that we can take. And it's an act of self-love to set healthy boundaries with ourselves and with others, because it supports us stepping into more of a space and an environment that is in alignment for us. So examples of what I see when people lack setting boundaries and what I've gone through as well. So before I learned how to set healthy boundaries, because the people pleaser does not want to set boundaries, the people pleaser is terrified to set boundaries because the people pleaser, like ego mind, is like, oh my God, you can't set a boundary. What if that person gets upset with you, and then there's conflict. You don't want conflict. You just want them to be happy with you. God forbid that they're upset with you because you need validation from them, because you're like people pleasing, because you need them to tell you you're good enough because you don't feel good enough. Like there's that dialogue that can be going on. It could be like, oh my gosh, like we can't set a boundary. Like what if this person abandons us and like they never talk to us again? Right. And that can be kind of stressful and scary, especially if it's like a family member, a loved one, a close friend, a spouse, a parent, a sister, a brother. Right. And it's like, oh, I don't want to cause conflict. I don't want to cause any issues. I couldn't handle it if this person abandoned me because I set a boundary and stood my ground or stopped tolerating a behavior that was unhealthy from them. So then you keep tolerating. Right. Another example is, say you and a friend or a coworker are working on a project together, and say you offered a certain amount of time and energy, right, and your gifts to this project. And then you start it with this other person and you are giving like 80% and they're giving like 20%, and you're over giving and they're overtaking, and it's upsetting you and it's making you feel resentful, and it's something that starts to frustrate you and make you feel angry. And then you feel out of control, like you don't have control over the circumstance. And then you feel upset with the other person. And because the whole circumstance feels out of control and you feel nervous or feel fearful to set the boundary, you again go from feeling out of control in the circumstance to then going, well, what do I have control over? I can eat, even though you're losing control with food and you're overeating, emotionally eating, or binge eating, which are all the loss of control with food as well. Right. So when we're out of alignment energetically and emotionally, and we're over giving, and we don't state our needs, and we don't ask for what we need, and we don't share our part in some kind of partnership or collaboration, and then it's not met, then we can get really upset and drained and resentful and angry. And that all is a lack of boundary and a lack of communication. And trust me, we're all human. It happens. We don't realize these things necessarily until we go through them. And then ideally we want to learn from them and make the change and not have it carry on for so long and have it happen again. We will keep attracting the same circumstances and situations and struggles until we go, you know what? I'm not tolerating that anymore. I'm not going to, out of fear of upsetting someone, not set the boundary anymore. Like this is having a significant impact on my energy, my nervous system. People pleasing and lack of boundaries shoots your cortisol levels through the roof. That stress hormone that we've talked so much about. Yeah, it's not good for anything. And now it's not like, but don't go extreme to where it's like you're saying yes to everyone and now you're like, I'm saying no to everything, and go all or nothing. We don't want to go all or nothing. We just want to be aware of what is a healthy amount of like yes and no, and where are you going way off because you're feeling insecure and unworthy, and that need for validation and praise from others is what's calling the shots here, which is us out of our power. So lack of boundaries really are all of these things. Not speaking up. It's like maybe someone is speaking inappropriately around your kids and you don't say anything, even though instead you're like, oh my gosh, this is having such a negative influence. It's like, well, why are you not speaking up? Right? Like I've talked about tolerating things, people's behaviors and circumstances that are just not okay. And that they're continuing to do it. It's not okay. Being treated poorly and not saying anything, right? That's on you. And when you go against your will, and I can't stress this enough, but when you go against your will, when you are out of alignment and you keep tolerating and you keep letting people walk all over you and your kindness and your generosity, and you keep overgiving, it's very draining. It's very time consuming energetically and emotionally. It drops our frequency because we're so out of alignment with what we truly desire and what power looks like. It can really mess with our energy centers of the body and our chakras. We feel more insecure in ourselves because we're expending so much energy, giving so much to everyone else and still lacking giving to ourselves, right? And that when we don't have the time and space to give to ourselves and nurture our own stuff and fill our own void, well, guess what happens? We keep opening that gap in that unworthiness void and continuing to go to self-sabotage with food. Because when you go against your will and you're out of alignment, you crave comfort. And most of us crave comfort from food. right? The pastas, the breads, the creamy sauces, the ice cream, the chocolate, the sweets, right? The fast foods, right? Or you crave sugar and then you go to food because there's a lack of sweetness in this experience. And so your way to compensate is to go to sugar. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in the Kick the Sugar 5-week course that is going to be live for 5 weeks starting the first week of October. So if you want to come and join us for a live 5 weeks, 5 90-minute sessions, which include Q&As at the end of each session that are all recorded, that you're going to get lifetime access to, plus 5 weeks of Voxer voice text support in a group, as well as lots of worksheets and recipes and different things to help you on the journey to kick your sugar cravings to the curb, then come and join us for Kick the Sugar. All the details are available at amberapproved.ca/podcast/436 in the Kick the Sugar banner. You can also just go to online programs at amberapproved.ca, and it's the one at the top. And it is on savings for $149 USD right now, regular $222 USD. So it's a great early bird. And as soon as you sign up, guess what? You get access to some epic bonuses, including my whole recipe archive of sugar-free recipes, your brain on sugar, sugar journal prompts, as well as blood sugar balancing, really great modules to help you start to regulate your blood sugar before we even get into the program. So that is available. Come and join the beautiful women already inside if you feel called to do so. But we try to grasp at this control because we feel out of control with these aspects of ourselves, these insecurities, these tolerations. We have so much power. We are such powerful beings, beautiful souls, but we have been programmed and conditioned and gone through experiences to make us believe otherwise. And this really fuels the ego, and it fuels the negative self-talk, and it fuels the justification. It fuels the victim mentality. It fuels us to continue to go, oh yeah, like next time I'm going to totally set that boundary. I'm going to say no. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. And then guess what? The time comes, you have all the intent to say or do the thing, and then you don't. And then you get hard on yourself and you feel guilty and you feel resentful against yourself and you get more upset with yourself. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to keep repeating that because that keeps you in a disconnect with you and the healing, loving, powerful relationship that you are trying to build with yourself. And we don't want that, right? No. Agreed? So essentially, to just recap from all of what I've just said, this fuels us to feel a lot of negative emotions: fear, worry, overwhelm, anger, frustration, resentment, grief, hatred, jealousy, comparison, judgment, irritation, agitation, sadness, despair, hopelessness. Like, oh my gosh, I just feel so overwhelmed and overburdened. Like, how am I ever going to be able to have more energy? You feel drained when you're in this kind of dynamic with lack of boundaries, right? Energetically, like you're just tired. Frequency can feel lower. And of course, our mood can drop. And then what do we want? We want to chase the quick fix. We want that quick fix dopamine high. We want the sugar. We want the fast food. We want to eat to soothe and numb or provide comfort to this discomfort and this misalignment that we're feeling in these different areas of our lives where we're lacking boundaries. And it can feel uncomfortable and nerve-wracking to want to set these boundaries. But let me tell you, once you start, it does get easier. And then it just feels like your norm. And then it's very rare that it feels more nerve-wracking. However, sometimes we're going to have discomfort as we go through this journey. Sometimes we're going to have to navigate difficult conversations and uncomfortable things, but it is part of life. Like, I've had a lot of conversations far ahead that I thought I would have to, uncomfortable conversations in different circumstances in my life, right? Like when my mom got multiple sclerosis and, she started to decline to the point where she needed to be put in a home in her 50s. Like, I never thought that we'd have to do that. And then having to go to the lawyer and become power of attorney and talk about wills and all of these things that it's like, oh my gosh, when you're 20 years old or like 19, 21 years old, like it's the last thing you think you should be doing at that age because your parents are only in their like late 40s or early 50s. And here I am. And it was very uncomfortable and hard at the time. And now I'm so grateful for the experiences to just know what questions to ask and be prepared and not just be like, well, everything's going to be a surprise because I don't want to think about it because it's a circumstance that no one wants to think about, right? Avoidance doesn't help us gain clarity. I've had some, really vulnerable conversations this year with my hubby around certain things that I had insecurities around, and it's gone beautifully, and he's so supportive, and it's cleared a lot of my own stuff out. I've had some, really big conversations with my dad, and, lots of changes are going on there, and it takes time to process, and I'm really excited for him, and, things, adventures and things coming up in his life journey. And at the same time, it takes time to process like my part of it. Right. But it's so important we have these conversations, because if we don't, then you're wondering, what if you don't know, you lack clarity. And I mean, we can deny ourselves of creating more closeness in relationships and a deeper connection. Also, when we lack these boundaries, we feel out of control because we feel like there's nothing we have control over. And that makes it easier for the ego to justify, well, you don't have control around anything else, but you have control with food. So you might as well just eat, right? There's that justification, that story, even though it's false, because if you're using food, you're out of control. So why do we hold back setting these boundaries? Why does it not feel so easy for most people? And it doesn't matter whether you're listening and you're a female or male, like this is across the board. There's so many things that can contribute to why we hold back to this. But what I see at the core is just like what I see at the core of everything. There is this unworthiness, this insecurity, this not feeling good enough. Okay. That's usually at the core. And then that feeds into, maybe you had experiences where you tried to set boundaries, or you tried to get vulnerable, or you tried to have these conversations, or say you weren't going to tolerate something, and then you got met with a massive backlash. Maybe you did get abandoned. Maybe your friend or your family member or whoever didn't talk to you for 6 months, and it felt really uncomfortable and really horrible. And you're like, I can't do that, because if I do that, then I get abandoned. And you create this story. And so you just tolerate, and you people please, and you overgive, and it's just exhausting you. So this fear and this fear comes up. And when we don't feel good enough, we don't feel worthy, we will be more vulnerable, and we will feel more out of our power. And the fear of abandonment, the fear of creating conflict, the fear of upsetting others really trumps the action of, okay, well, yes, this feels uncomfortable. Yes, that's a possibility, but they could also be very responsive and very supportive at the same time. And it's important for my mental, physical, and energetic well-being to do this. And it's actually important for theirs as well, whether or not they realize it and believe it. Maybe they'll thank me later for me to set these healthy boundaries. But when we're not willing to move past the fear, which is often just an invisible brick wall, the false evidence appearing real, we let fear of the reaction of others block us from having these conversations, setting boundaries, asking for help, establishing like clarity on things being equal. Like when I first started my business, I did, workshops at different places, would meet people in different collaborations. And I was really getting into learning how to set healthy boundaries. And it was very important. And here's what I always experienced though. If I decided to do a collaboration or host a workshop in a space, which I was always so grateful for the people that wanted to host me, but I would establish the boundaries, and I would say, hey, like, here's an example. Hey, I need a minimum of 15 people to come to this workshop for it to be like worth it for me to come into town and like dedicate this time for the price that I'm offering it at, blah, 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 blah. And like taking the time to set up my presentation and all of these things. So if we don't end up with that, then what would probably be best is to host it online instead, or to maybe like cancel it, or to have the enrollment be longer so that we can make sure we get enough people. And what are we both doing to market it so that we can like easily guarantee we're going to have more, 15 or more, just as an example. And then having circumstances where they're like, oh yeah, we totally have the 15. I think there's like 20 or 30 people, blah, 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 blah. Right. And so I do my part, I put in all my time and effort, prepare everything, and show up, and there's 3 people there. And I'm like, this is bullshit. Pardon my French, but there's no way that there was 20 to 25 or 30 people signed up if there's only 3 people here, and there's no weather, there's no issues, right? Like something isn't right here. And so then of course I am there, I do my part, and then I'm like, hey, I thought we had this agreement. So I follow up on it. And then of course, if the other person doesn't have the boundaries and isn't willing to see where I'm coming from, then there would usually be no further collaboration, because it needs to be equal exchange of energy on both sides. It needs to be clear on both sides. And it needs to be, of course, the three people that were there got a lot of value. And on the inside, there is some level of like, this does feel like a misaligned energy exchange because of what the boundaries were and that they were not honored. Right. And regardless, I gave it my all, but there would be no further doing anything because the boundaries weren't honored. And especially if there was a conversation had and there wasn't honesty, right? It's like, just be honest. Just be honest. Don't make things up because the proof is in the pudding, right? So we have these circumstances that happen to us, and we quickly find out who has their own healthy boundaries and who doesn't, especially when you're going into a collaboration or some kind of group work or whatever it is, where one person wants to set boundaries to make sure things are streamlined for both parties and the other doesn't, right? But the beauty of this is as we continue to hold our boundaries and stand for what feels best for us, we attract more of an aligned mirror of those who are in the exact same circumstance. It just can take a little bit of time to fully get the alignment, right? Because there's usually just things within yourself that you're working on and shifting that will attract that mirror, and make it really be in alignment. So I could have let my insecurity hold back and not followed up on the attendance numbers, but I'm like, no, this is important, right? I'm dedicated a lot of my time on a day, a weekend. This is important for me to understand what happened. It's so important. So we fear the response. We fear the reaction of others and how they may respond to us if we share the boundaries, if we speak our truth, if we are just ourselves, right? It's not even just with boundaries, because there is some part of an insecurity in us, some part of us that's like, I need everyone to like me. And if they don't, then there's something wrong with me and I'll never be happy. And that's our own insecurity to deal with. I see this, and I used to be in this attachment style. There's 3 attachment styles, and I was the attached, which is like you would attach onto someone emotionally if they gave you attention or support or love. And then you'd be so attached to them needing to be happy and to like you and to try and have control. It's a very unhealthy dynamic to be in. And it's honestly such a turnoff. And I have so much love and compassion for the me that was in that, because it was just from a place of insecurity and I just didn't know what I didn't know. But what I observe from it now is that when we're in this attachment place and we attach onto others and their happiness, is that we are essentially, because we're not secure, putting our power and happiness and worth into other people and their mood, their opinions, the way they want us to be. And if you're in a good mood, say one day, and then you go and hang out with someone, but you're attached to them, you will leave the interaction feeling upset, stressed, emotional. You will have taken on their stuff because they're down, so you go down. Or then maybe they're happy and you're down, and then you're like, oh, well, I need to be happy because they are. I don't want to upset them. But having to morph our emotional state to appease others or to try and gain approval of someone is not ideal. It usually comes from insecurity. So we want to work on detaching, having deep connection with people, but having to be a healthy exchange and having it be equal, and having the communication and connection be good, and having the boundaries established. There's a book, I think it's called Attachments, or the 3 Attachment Styles. It's a good read. It talks more about this. But we don't want our emotions and our state of being to be dictated or dependent on how others feel positively or negatively, because if someone's going through a hard time and you're attached to that, you're going to be going through a hard time when you don't have to, because it's not your stuff. So these emotional and energetic boundaries, and saying no, that's not mine. I'm going to send them so much love. That's not mine. I'm not going to take that on. That is so important that we build those practices over time. And the ego is a huge player with all of this, because the ego tells you you're not good enough. The ego convinces you to be afraid to set a boundary for fear of what other people are going to say or think, or how they're going to react, or that you could get abandoned, and that maybe it happened in the past, and it puts that in your face and goes, see, it happened before, so you can't do it again. So don't bother, even though different circumstances. And honestly, if people are going to react immensely to you setting a healthy boundary, because we can do it in a loving and respectful way, if they're going to react to you, you have to question how much time you want to spend with this person. And you might say, well, it's family. Well, it's this person. It's yeah, but if they're disrespecting you and mistreating you and stomping all over you? Like, no, it doesn't matter. You have every right to set your boundaries. This is important for your healing your relationship with food, feeling safe in your body, regulating your nervous system, regulating your hormones, reducing inflammation, sleeping better, just mentally feeling calmer and more at ease. This is important for all of that. But the ego wants you to give your power away to it and go into the fear and the insecurity and have that make the decision to keep overstepping, to keep people pleasing, to keep out of alignment, to keep tolerating others walking all over you and abusing your generosity and just being great takers. And that's not what we want. So can you resonate with this? What are you taking away? What's like, ooh, yeah, this is me. This is striking a chord. This is triggering me. This is triggering my ego, right? What's coming up? It's just so good to have this conversation and this dialogue because it's so common and I've done it before. Oh my gosh, this used to be me to a T. So I can so relate and just have so much compassion for any of you who are relating to this and currently experiencing this. And it's really cool because a couple of my new clients, I'm like, don't worry, we're going to deal with this. And they're so excited that they're finally going to be equipped with the tools and the support to work through this because there's nothing better than having someone walking beside you every step of the way, cheering you on, giving you prompts on how to like set these healthy boundaries in a mindful way, right? To have the support thereafter, depending on how the person responded to help you continue to keep going. It just feels so good to have someone there with you and not feel like you have to do this all alone. So as I always say, if this is resonant for you, you know what to do. AmberApproved.ca, book that 30-minute body freedom consultation and let's connect to talk about exploring the possibility of going on the journey to food and body freedom and so much more together. So benefits of setting healthy boundaries. Let's talk about this. And as a homework, I would love, love, love it if you journaled a little bit on where is the place where I'm lacking boundary? Because if you're lacking boundary, you're leaking energy somewhere. And that means you're draining your vital life force energy, your physical energy, your emotional energy. We don't want that. So where is the place? And if you want to put them all down and make a list, you can, but where is the place where you're leaking energy and you're lacking boundaries? Where you deep down, you know, in your deepest heart of hearts that it's so important that you set this boundary, but the fear and your ego continues to talk you out of it. So you suffer, you struggle. We don't want that anymore, right? Explore that first. And then what is one boundary that you want to work on setting? Start with something small. Ideally, if you want to build a bit of confidence, start with something easy. You know, start with maybe you overbooked your schedule this week. So you reschedule one thing or you cancel one thing or you rebook it and you open up some space for you, right? Or maybe there's a conversation to be had with someone or there's just something to say no to. There's just a no. But I want you to think about that next. And can you take that step this week? One step toward this, it's going to build your confidence because when you set healthy boundaries, you patch up the energy drains. You gain more energy, you build more confidence, you take your power back, which feels so freeing and expansive and liberating. You build confidence. This helps you fill your void. Learning how to set boundaries helps you fill your void. It's an act of self-love, and we can do it in a loving and respectful way. Do not yell at people when you're trying to set boundaries. Do not let your ego come in and have the conversation like this is you and your power. You're coming from a place of respect and compassion and care for both parties. And you're going like, I got to support my greatest good. And this means setting this healthy boundary. This is important for me and you. Setting healthy boundaries with yourself, blocking off self-care time, right? Putting in a 5-minute self-care break and stopping when it comes up to actually give yourself what you need. Your tech hygiene boundaries, eating mindfully practice boundary, like getting into these things where it's like, you know what, this is actually helping me overcome emotionally eating because if I am setting healthy boundaries and I'm staying more in alignment and I'm not letting others walk all over me and I'm not overgiving and draining my energy, I have more energy. And if I have more energy, I'm less fatigued. And if I'm less fatigued, it's harder to go into the I don't care mentality. And it's harder to go into the, well, I'm exhausted and my appetite level's through the roof. So I just want to eat. That clears out more easily. So there's less emotional eating triggers. You get proud, you become excited with yourself. You feel like, oh my gosh, I did it. I kept my word. I set that boundary. That felt so good. You have more integrity with yourself. That helps you build confidence. That helps you believe in yourself. That helps you go, I can do this. I can change this. I can totally move forward with this. It's so powerful. right? That is power. And then, of course, because you're more in alignment, because you're not feeling out of control with all these things, there's less likelihood of you going to food for comfort, to numb, suppress, or avoid feeling what you're feeling. And because you're feeling more in alignment, your energy is better and bigger, and you're feeling more in your power. Well, the more in your power you feel, the less likely you are to want to go and self-sabotage with food and hurt yourself. When you're in your power, you don't do that. It is when we're out of our power that we do that. Boundaries help to lovingly protect us and others. They set us up for success. They open up time and space, which is valuable and important for us, for self-care, for rest, for sleep, for mindful eating, for being aware of and having time to look at what your emotional eating triggers are or your lack of boundaries are, and actually to start understanding what steps do I want to take to deal with this. If you have no time available to look at any of this, nothing is going to change. That's the honest truth. We do need some time and space to reflect, understand, build awareness, process our emotions, have practices to help us along the way. You can't just rush your way through this, which is a good thing because you would deny yourself of learning the lessons. Often when we have good boundaries, we have healthier relationships, deeper relationships, more deeply connected relationships. And for those ones that actually never served you anyway, you actually weed them out or you create bigger distance, right? And that's good for you because why would you want to surround yourself with a bunch of unhealthy relationships, people that don't treat you well and respect you? I don't, right? So boundaries are very important for all of that. And the more in your power you are, like I've been saying, the less likely you are to want to go to food and self-sabotage. And this helps you gain momentum and traction on your journey to food and body freedom. This is an important thing that I coach most of my clients on, and we do it at a pace that feels good for you. Some boundaries take, heck, I had a client, it took her 6 months to set a boundary because it was such a big one with her daughter, but she did it finally. When we worked on other ones first, she had to build up her confidence at her pace. There's no force. It's got to be what feels good for you. And then I have some clients who are like, I'm setting all the boundaries this week. And I'm like, awesome. Let me know how it goes. Right? This is what feels best for you. So what are you taking away? What did you learn today? I feel like this whole boundary conversation is going to turn into a course. It'd definitely be part of the ego mastery program. I don't know when that's coming. My intuition's like not this year, just maybe next year, I'm thinking, but I'm going to do a lot more mindset kind of like master classes and programs. I feel like I've done a lot of like physical symptoms and things now, and there's like a whole library of things you can immerse yourself into. So now it's time to really immerse us more into the ego, the boundaries, all of these emotional aspects that fuel self-sabotage with food, because they're just as, if not more important. The mindset, like I'm always saying, your beliefs and thoughts dictate the way you behave. Your behavior dictates the way you feel. So let's work on the mindset. Let's be willing to do the deeper work. It's so freeing and liberating. Like I said earlier, I would not have been in such a positive mindset with my ankle debacle yesterday if I wouldn't have done my deeper work. I would have gotten pissy. My ego would have taken over, been like, why did this happen? And blah, blah, blah. And da, 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 da. None of that happened. I didn't go into reaction once. I had a little moment where I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. And then I'm like, oh, I hope there's nothing serious, right? But otherwise, it's like, no, set the intent. We'll be fine. We're going to heal. It will be easy. And the more I allow and surrender and support rather than resist, or go into victimhood mode, the easier it's going to be for my body because my nervous system isn't as ramped up, right? So this healing and this work has helped me immensely when circumstances come up for me. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. The show notes can be found at amberapproved.ca/podcast/436. As always, you can go to amberapproved.ca to take the free emotional eating quiz if you're wondering if you're struggling. This is also where you can book your consultation. You can learn more about me and body freedom. You can read and watch dozens of testimonials from past clients as well. You can also sign up for the Kick the Sugar 5-week course and anything else that suits your fancy, or just come along for the ride and listen to the podcast. I'm just so glad you all are here. Remember, there's no better time than the present to take action on your health, setting a healthy boundary, saying no, whatever it is for you that is speaking to you. So take that action now. I'm cheering you on. You've got this. I know you can do it. Sending you so much love. Have a beautiful day, a great week, And I will look forward to sharing a whole new episode with all of you beautiful souls next Sunday. Take care.